Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to the Daily Herold here on Badlands Media. I'm your host, John Herold. I'm very excited about today's show. Actually, a little nervous, which doesn't happen to me very often, but that's all because of the guests we're going to be having on. Very excited to talk to her. We're going to bring her on here shortly, but first we're going to get a quick word from the sponsor of today's show, Mr. Mike Lindell with MyPillow.
I hear every day about the products you all wish MyPillow carried. Well, guess what? We probably do. Slippers, bathrobes, pet beds, blankets, mattresses, sleepwear, loungewear, duvets, comforters, pot holders, aprons, oven mitts, and so much more. And they're all on sale. For example, get our best-selling standard MyPillows for only $14.98. Body pillows, $29.98. 6-piece bath towels or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bedsheet sets. Any size, any color, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And I've never done this before. When you spend $100 or more, you're going to get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.
All right. Well, I see Dr. Carol Swain in the background of the studio here. So I'm going to introduce her and bring her on right away. Dr. Carol Swain, she's an award-winning political scientist, author, former professor. She's a prominent voice on many key issues that we're facing as a country today. And I honestly don't feel like any introduction I could give her would properly do her background justice. So I'm just going to bring her on. I don't know if her camera's working. Doctor, are you there?
I am, but I that's what I was trying to check in about the camera. It's the wrong camera. It seems to be on it, and I'm trying to change the cameras, but I was not able to connect with anyone before the show started.
Okay. In the settings at the bottom, we're pretty low key. There you go.
Okay.
You got it.
All right.
Awesome. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good. Honored to have you on the show today. I got a couple questions, and I kind of want to start with 2 key topics: election and education, election integrity and education. And I want to start with the election one because Trump just signed an executive order a day or 2 ago, kind of tackling election integrity. And, you know, going through your Twitter and seeing stuff you've said in the past, I think you very much align with us that our elections in this country are not secure. They're not. I think they're totally fraudulent. I think 2020 was stolen, and I'm curious what your thoughts are about this executive order, and if it goes far enough. Where do you see that heading?
Well, I want to say that in 2018, after the midterm elections, I wrote an op-ed pressing or encouraging the Republicans to pursue election reform, because before 2020, some of the ways that the 2020 election was adversely impacted or stolen was evident in 2018. And when it comes to President Trump's executive order, it's a great step in the right direction, but it has to be followed up by legislation. And I know that Cleta Mitchell is working on election integrity, and I believe she has something like a Citizens Voter Bill of Rights. I don't remember the exact name of it, but if we need national legislation, the executive order will enable them to get started to make some changes, but constitutionally, they are limited because the Constitution gives states some power when it comes to elections. But one of the ways that elections have been stolen is through national legislation like the motor voter bill. There was national legislation that enabled people signing up for driver's licenses to register to vote. It sounded like a great idea at the time. At the time the legislation was passed, it was not in an environment where people who were undocumented were able to get licenses.
See, the problem I see with with needing legislation is it's a catch-22, because the people that have benefited from our fraudulent election system are the one that we're expecting to pass legislation to fix the election system. And I don't know how we get them to do that. And every time we've tried, it seems like it goes nowhere.
Where there's a partisan advantage, Democrats have a vested interest in making the voter registration regulations and requirements as lax as possible. What we have in place, or what we had in place in 2018, 2020, even 2024, normally works against Republicans. And so I think there's a partisan interest in election reform. Ideally, if most Americans really cared about our Constitution and understood what happens when an undocumented person votes as someone who's unauthorized, that dilutes the votes of American citizens. Everyone should be on board, and this should be a bipartisan issue.
Yeah. So how do we, as on the more local individual level, actually get our legislators to act on this? Because I feel like we're screaming into the void sometimes, trying to get movement on any of this election integrity stuff.
Well, when you're working with members of Congress, you are screaming into the void. But when you start educating the voters and starting at the local level and talking to regular people, then I think that they have power. They have more power than they realize, and that education is going to be key. And it's not a Republican issue. It should be a bipartisan issue. The fact that President Trump won the popular vote, and he won so handily in 2024, is just evident that the American people, they wanted change. And for the first time in decades, 40% of the American public say that the country is headed in the right direction. So as part of being headed in the right direction, we need election reform. We need it before the midterms.
Yeah. I'm skeptical we'll get there, but I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful.
Skeptical because you're the audience and you're seeing all this negativity out there, and we can get there. We will get there. It will take a different strategy. It will take some money behind a campaign. We need to have our pre-election campaign about
Agreed.
Educating voters and on those issues where we need them to prod their elected officials at the state and federal level. Then we need to let them know about those issues, and we need to have a plan.
Yeah. Next week, I'm going to have my first congressman on. I think it's Cloud of Texas. And so I'm going to be asking him these questions. I'm going to put him to the grind here to get him, get movement on this. But
that's good. But I think we have to put money behind a campaign and work with the voters so they can pressure their elected officials. Otherwise, nothing happens.
I agree with you there. And so the second thing you said there was educating people, right? And you were the vice chair of that 1776 commission that Trump had in his first term, which I absolutely love that. I've read through that a few times now. The Biden administration comes in and gets rid of it. And I think one of Trump's executive orders reestablished the 1776 commission. Is it still active now?
I would say that it's not active, but it's been an executive order reversed Biden's executive order. But people like me who were commissioned back in the last administration, 2020, our terms have expired. And so right now the commission is not active, but I believe they are operating through America First. And there is a plan to have a celebration for our nation's birthday in 2026. Yeah,
we're looking forward to that for sure. But so Trump now he's tackling the Department of Education. He's going to dismantle it. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, because you have an extensive background in education, so what do you think about what he's doing with the Department of Education?
Well, I fully support the executive order. There are parts of dismantling the department that will have to go through Congress. But if I were president, which I'm not, I would not have appointed a Secretary of Education or a Deputy Secretary or any of those people that were appointed to run the department. I would have established a 10-person demolition crew, and they would be charged with going in there, doing some of the same things that's happening right now, but deciding which parts need to go to other agencies. And they would have a date to sunset the organization. And so by the time Congress gets around to it, it would just be a shell anyway. So I think the executive order has crippled the organization. That's great. It's crippled. It's not dead. And if it's not eliminated legislatively, a Democrat could get elected and they could go and they could try to undo anything that's done by executive order.
Well, can you explain briefly, like, what are the impacts going to be of dismantling and what Trump is doing with the Department of Education? Because I don't think people realize the impact it has, the negative impact the Department of Education has on people. So this change that he's implementing, how will that affect our education as a whole?
Well, one thing, it returns it to the states, and the money for some of the programs that Democrats and Republicans both agree that they're good programs, that is going to be, and it has already been farmed out to different other governmental entities that are not being abolished. And so I think that the indoctrination and the waste, there was so much waste at the Department of Education as well as other departments, and the bloat, the bureaucratic bloat, that has been eliminated. I think that education will be more focused around making sure that our school children are equipped to compete with other children around the world, because we know that we spend billions of dollars, in some cases far more than other nations, and we're ranked 40 among nations as far as education. So our children are failing, have been failing, and in the Black community, the children are languishing. They're doing far worse than they were doing before the Department of Education was established. That's all of America's children. There's no place to go except up.
Do you think school choice will help with that too?
Well, school choice is only for those people that actually are positioned to take advantage of it. And I know that there are some conservatives that don't want to hear this, but there are people who do not have a choice. And their choice is that even if states pass school choice legislation and they subsidize private education, there are people that can barely, afford to send their kids to public schools. Those children are not going to be able to take advantage of homeschooling that might be subsidized or private schools that might be subsidized. I think it's very important for every American, and most of us are paying taxes, local taxes, to support public schools, to stay involved with public schools. What we really want to happen is the woke to be taken out, the agendas, the agendas to push, LGBTQ and critical race theory and DEI. All of those things need to come out of K through 12 education, and we need to focus on the basics: reading, writing, science, math, those types of skills. That's what we need to focus on. And I think that education will be improved by the changes, but it will be different in every state. When it comes to the blue states and the local communities, Nashville, for example, is a city that's blue. Memphis is a blue city. Detroit, no matter what happens in other parts of the states, if you have local control, some of them may decide that they like indoctrination, and the quality of education in those places may not change, but it gives states and localities an opportunity for the parents and for the decision makers to decide what type of educational system that they want. And it is more likely that the changes will get more stakeholders involved. And I think the outcome will be much better for our children. It should never have been centralized, and the Department of Education should have been abolished by Reagan.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it kind of goes hand in hand with elections. So if we're going to get the changes at the local level, again, we need to, I think elections are the number one issue in our country just because of how many things it affects.
Yes.
But final question for you before we get you out of here. We're heading into this golden age now. What are your priorities? What are you looking forward to the most? What do you want to see the most?
Education reform and election integrity. Those are the two basic, most important issues. And then I have to tell you and everyone else that's listening or watching that none of the Trump changes will be lasting unless we can change the hearts and minds of Americans. We need a spiritual revival in this
Amen.
country because there's so many people that are deceived, they're misled. It is as if they have a cloud over them and blinders. And the only thing that can change that is a national revival. So we can work very, very hard, try to change things, and it's good to work hard and try to change things. But for those of us who believe in Judeo-Christian values and in the living God, we need a national revival. That's the only way you change a nation.
Amazing. I agree with you completely. But Dr. Swain, I truly appreciate you coming on. We'll keep it short. And any closing thoughts? The floor is yours. Otherwise, we'll get you out of here.
No, thank you so much for having me on the show. And I'm sorry about that camera glitch in the beginning.
Oh, don't worry about it at all. Don't worry about it at all. Thank you so much. Hopefully we'll get you back on again soon as stuff develops, because I am curious to get your perspective on, I have boatload more questions, but we'll save it for another day.
Well, anytime.
Okay.
I'll be happy to come back on.
Appreciate it. All right. She's brilliant. I love what she said there at the end too. But we were in agreement. It's election integrity and education reform, two major issues. And again, election integrity is such a big one, because if we don't get that fixed, I don't think we can really fix everything else. I'm just getting her out of the studio here. All right. Yeah, she did call me negative though. I'm not negative. I'm just being a realist, guys. Anyway, we're going to get to the news. We got a lot to get through. It's Friday, so we'll have the liberal meltdown of the week and kind of a recap of a couple things from this week. So we'll get cracking once I get my screen all set up. And what'd you guys think of that in the chat, by the way? Yeah, we'll get this clipped out. Okay. Ash, you'll have to text me and let me know how I did too. It's so weird. I don't get nervous. Like, I don't even get nervous at conferences. Like standing in front of people talking, I don't get nervous. I never get nervous for streams. I get excited now and then, but never nervous. But this one I was actually nervous for. I don't know why. Anyway, okay, so no savings changes on the Doge website. We're still feeling rich at $807.45 that Doge has saved for us so far. I'm just wondering when that's going to hit my bank account. Okay. Well, we're going to start it off with a couple of Trump's executive actions from yesterday. Some interesting ones. And kind of in line with what we were just talking about, the 1776 commission that she was on, Dr. Carol Swain. This is the executive order that is restores truth and sanity to American history. And it's interesting to me that while Trump is doing all these massive changes with our government, he's also tackling historical stuff and the founders and statues, and we're gonna have this big birthday party on next year. It's just interesting how he's doing both things at the same time. He's revitalizing our history and trying to fix things and restore it to how it was back in the day. But this is what he did yesterday. He signed an executive order restoring truth and sanity to American history by revitalizing key cultural institutions and reversing the spread of divisive ideology. He aims to ensure that the Smithsonian is an institution that sparks children's imagination, celebrates American history and ingenuity, serves as a symbol to the world of American greatness, and makes America proud. I also saw yesterday, I think it was Richard Grinnell, he was featured in an article talking about the Kennedy Center and how much wasteful money, like they were in debt. They were borrowing money to payroll stuff while they were funding DEI initiatives and DEI searches and all these things. It's crazy. But they're he's tackling all the institutions, not just the Kennedy Center. He's going after the Smithsonian. He's also having the Secretary of the Interior restore federal parks, monuments, similar to that executive order he had in the first term. So it's just he's doing this everywhere. He's trying to hit every corner of the government, combating the corrosive ideology. So I thought that was a good one. We also got this too, kind of in line with that, making the District of Columbia safe and beautiful. He's got a task force going, created a task force, and they're trying to clean up DC. something they should really do everywhere, but I guess you might as well do it in the place that you can, which for them is DC. And then probably the biggie I would say from yesterday's orders is this one. He's essentially, the order is called exclusions from federal labor management relations programs. He's essentially trying to make it so that these departments in our government can't unionize. Like they can't do the collective bargaining. Today, President Trump signed an executive order using authority granted by the Civil Service Reform Act of 1978 to end collective bargaining with federal unions in the following agencies with national security missions. And so all of these agencies that I'm about to list, they all were able to do collective bargaining with federal unions prior to this order. But this the Civil Service Reform Act, there's a part in there where the president can deem, I can even show you guys this. It's right here. B1. The president may issue an order excluding any agency from coverage under this chapter if the president determines that the agency or subdivision has a primary function, intelligence, counterintelligence, investigative, or national security work, which is kind of broad. But none of these agencies were under this umbrella before, which is why I think it's interesting, because he goes through and he lists all these and is like, well, even even the International Trade Administration, if we have bad trade, that's a national security issue. There's a few of them that are kind of weird like that. It's like you wouldn't look at that and be, well, that's not really a national security issue, but he labeled it as such. The Center for Disease Control, I don't know. The FDA, is that you could probably argue that's not as much a national security thing, but the way he's described it here and in previous executive orders, he's able to clarify it as that. And now he's like taking the unions out of it. It's crazy. So Department of Defense, Department of Veteran Affairs, National Science Foundation, and Coast Guard. If you guys go to the website, you can read through this and see his justification for it, the actual executive order. It is kind of interesting. I'm not going to go through every single one, though. The DHS, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. Yeah, I'm not going to read all through. This is so much. And we're already like almost halfway through the show. But I would encourage you to check it out. I think it's an interesting move, and it's going to be met with a lawsuit immediately. I can guarantee you, just like everything he does is met with a lawsuit. And then we have another law firm that's been basically singled out, addressing risks from WilmerHale. And this is the one that had to do with Mueller. After Mueller wrote his report after the Russiagate stuff, he went and worked for these guys and got a big payday, I guess. And so Trump said, yeah, not happening, and wrote an executive order just for them. All right, let's get into some other news. Utah's become the first state to ban fluoride in public water systems. Chats, I seem hurried. I'm sorry, Slew. I will try to slow down a little bit. I'm not hurried. I just have a lot to get through. There's a lot of news. And I'm still recovering from being nervous for the first time in like forever. Anyway, this is awesome, I think. It comes on the heels of Robert Kennedy Jr. getting in there. I wonder if we're going to see this nationwide. I haven't personally done any research into fluoride and whatnot, but I've heard other people talk about it, and it is interesting. There's data points out there of how bad fluoride in our water is bad for us, you know? So I'm just trying to keep an eye on the chat too, see what everybody's saying. But yeah, I hope this comes. I mean, I would love to see this everywhere. I don't see how it's a bad thing. We got this one's super interesting to me. Putin proposes temporary administration in Ukraine to facilitate elections and peace accords. If you remember back a month ago, 3 weeks ago, I don't remember. It's all a blur now. But we were talking about these peace negotiations, and we were at a point where Putin and the United States were both saying, well, maybe we just need to come to a ceasefire, hold elections in Ukraine, and then we can sign the peace deal. Because they wanted Zelensky out of there. And Zelensky's been a problem child throughout this whole thing. But now instead of actually doing the ceasefire and then holding elections, they're offering to put a temporary administration to oversee this stuff. So again, they're bringing up the elections. I really think this is where it's going to go. We're going to have some sort of election before the peace deal is signed. And if you remember our sales guy, Matt Byram, he's the one who floated the idea that maybe Putin should run for the president of Ukraine, and he can agree to a peace deal with himself. Anyway, Russian President Vladimir Putin proposed placing Ukraine under a temporary administration to enable new elections and sign key agreements aimed at settling the ongoing conflict. During a visit to the northern port of Murmansk, Putin made the suggestion amid U.S. efforts to reach a resolution by reconnecting with Russia and holding separate discussions from both Moscow and Kyiv. This is an interesting quote here. In my opinion, the newly elected president of the United States sincerely wants to end the conflict for a number of reasons. Putin's call for a temporary administration appeared to reflect his longstanding view that Ukraine's current leadership is not legitimate. A temporary administration could be introduced in Ukraine under the auspices of the UN, the United States, European countries, and our partners. Putin said while speaking at the seamen of the port, this would be in order to hold democratic elections and bring to power a capable government enjoying the trust of the people, and then to start talks with them about the peace treaty. So again, they're coming back to, let's remove the illegitimate president and the cabinet, or whatever they call them over there. It's not the legislator, it's parliament or something. None of them have had an election in years. They're supposed to be elected out or hold new elections back in 2023, and they've just been on pause because of the war. And that's part of the reason I think Ukraine is continuing the war efforts. They don't want to lose their power. But it seems like they're being pretty adamant now, Russia, the United States, that we're going to get rid of you guys before we even come to any terms of peace. Because a new power in there would negotiate a better deal for everybody. So we'll see what happens. I just talked about this one. Trump moves to end collective bargaining in federal agencies. So we can skip that story. I think we can skip this story too, because Wilmer Hale, we just read that one. Another reason I'm a little disorganized today is it's Friday. My kids have mass at their school. And so I went to mass this morning. That's from 9 to 10. Normally I'm prepping from 8 to showtime, noon my time. And it got cut in half with the interview. So I'm a little on edge this morning. Iran sends response to Trump's call for new nuclear deal. If you remember last week, I think Trump was on the interview and he said that he wrote a letter to this guy, whatever his name is, Khamenei. And he just said, we want to denuclearize. We want peace. Saudi Arabia and Russia both said that they would help negotiate peace, or at least negotiate denuclearization with Iran. But this was their response. Our policy is still to not engage in direct negotiations while under maximum pressure and military threats. However, as it was the case in the past, indirect negotiations can continue. So I'm assuming we're just going to keep doing the same thing we've been doing, negotiating through Saudi Arabia, or I think it's Saudi Arabia right now. Ghost will have to let me know. And by the way, Ghost is going to be doing his show today at 3 p.m. Eastern, I believe, his geopolitics roundup for the week. So make sure you guys tune in for that after the show is over. This is a pretty big one. One of the bigger ones that we'll go through. The Judge Boasberg, again, orders Trump administration to preserve signal messages on Yemen strikes. Judge Boasberg has ordered the Trump administration to preserve signal messages exchanged by top national security officials during military strikes in Yemen earlier this month. The ruling mandates that cabinet officials named in a lawsuit by government transparency group American Oversight retain all signal messages sent and received between March 11th and March 15th. I wonder if those are the exact dates that Goldberg from The Atlantic was in there. Because I wouldn't be surprised if he was in there and he captured all these messages that took place. I bet he sent them somewhere to somebody. I bet Boasberg's already seen them, if he's as corrupt as we think he is. And so I wonder if this is heading towards some sort of, if it's like a trap. Okay, you're gonna have to preserve them and then turn them all over. And if they don't turn everything over, if they get in trouble, I don't know. This is the story's not going away. The signal story, and it really shouldn't, because as I said the other day, we can objectively look at what happened here and say that we never should have been on signal in the first place. Are the highest levels of our government, and really any levels of our government, there should be its own separate system. They shouldn't be using a commercial app where it's even possible to accidentally add a journalist to your chat. It never should have happened in the first place. And that's from an objective standpoint. Okay, I'm not going to play the comparison game of other administrations did it worse. It shouldn't have happened. And we should get to the bottom of it. And they should be transparent about it. If they did it, own up to it, show us what you said, and let's figure out a way to move on. But now there's this lawsuit. I think this lawsuit is only going to make things worse and uglier. I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know if we'll see some sort of resignation from anybody. I don't think Trump would allow that to necessarily happen, but people are calling for it. So we'll see. And then in the chat, I see 33605 says judge won't have the clearance. All will be redacted. I don't know if that's true because we're told there's no classified information in there. So will it be redacted? I doubt it. It shouldn't be. Anyway, the U.S. pauses contributions to the World Trade Organization. And I have questions about this. The United States has halted its financial contributions to the World Trade Organization, according to 3 trade sources who spoke with Reuters, or however you say that word. In 2024, the WTO's annual budget stood at 205 million Swiss francs, with the United States contributing around 11% based on its share of global trade, according to public documents from the organization. My question is, why do we need a World Trade Organization? Like, what is its function? And why are we paying money to it? Because can't countries just conduct trade as individual? Like, do we need a body overseeing this stuff? And all these worldwide international organizations are corrupt and benefit the regime. They're not there to benefit the individual countries that are trading. So why are we even in this? Let's just withdraw from this. I am not a fan of any of the international organizations, especially what they've turned into. I understand the idea after World War, let's just all be on the same side. Let's have the United Nations, NATO, all these things, make sure that, the evil communists don't rise up. Little did we know the communists were part of NATO the whole time. But none of these things, World Trade Organization, World Health Organization, they're unnecessary. They're all globalist organizations. Let's get rid of it. So I hope that's where this is going. I honestly forgot this organization even existed until I saw this article. It's like, why the heck are we even part of this, let alone paying money to it in the first place? Doesn't need to exist. We need to get to a spot where it's more regional, like the regions of responsibility that we talk about in the Power Hour sometimes. I think that's where it's going to head. And if that does take place, I think we're going to see stuff like this just naturally sift away. But I'm more of the let's rip the Band-Aid off approach. Here's a story about the Signal chat. I probably should have brought this up earlier, but again, my tabs are all out of whack right now. Officials say text sent by Waltz Ratcliffe in Signal chat may have damaged U.S. ongoing ability to gather intel on the Houthis. And I only wanted to point this out because I thought it was really funny. They're talking about the messages that were sent, and they point to 2 distinct people, Waltz and Ratcliffe, about what they said in the chat. And like, oh my gosh, you're telling the terrorists that we're watching them, as if they didn't already know. So let me read this. In one of the messages, Ratcliffe told other cabinet members who were discussing whether to delay the strikes that the CIA was in the act of mobilizing assets to collect intelligence on the group, but that a delay might offer them the opportunity to identify better starting points for coverage on Houthi leadership. And this is the part that's hilarious. That text, according to current and former officials, exposed the mere fact that the U.S. is gathering intelligence on them. Like, these people didn't already know that? It's just so funny the way that these leftist establishment media, mainstream media organizations like CNN, what they will put in articles to try to spin their narrative. Like, that's an obvious, it's just so stupid. These people are so stupid. Maybe that was only funny to me, but whatever. Huge earthquake in Myanmar today, like 140 dead, at least they're claiming. I know none of us are there to verify, but this has been a story all over all the major news outlets. They've made an appeal for assistance. The leader of Myanmar's ruling military junta has made a rare call for help from the international community after an earthquake killed at least 144 people, a figure he warned will rise. The reason it's interesting to me is because of this ending part. Back in 2021, you all remember the leader of their military basically took over and seized power there, and he's since been the leader. And throughout these last couple of years, we've been talking about all these templates, right, all over the world of, how is the United States going to resolve the issues we have here, specifically surrounding like our elections and the corrupt nature of all the people in our government. And you see places in like Germany, their highest court ordered new elections. You have stuff going on in Brazil with Bolsonaro and what happened there. That was probably most similar to what we had here. But then Myanmar too. The military just stepped right in, took it over, and they've been in charge since. And it's like these templates. But I thought it was interesting that this happened there, and they've kind of distanced themselves from the international community. The leader over there is wanted by the International Criminal Court, which is another organization I think we need to do away with. And now that they're framing this as if he's asking for help. And so if who's going to respond? Will people respond? Or is he still an international criminal? I don't know. Anyway, Trump has asked the Supreme Court to overturn Boasberg's ruling, blocking him from using the Alien Enemies Act for deportations. So we are directly getting appeals to the Supreme Court, and it's about time. This may not be the first time, but with this one especially, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how they rule. Anyway, emergency appeal, which asks the justices to overturn an order from U.S. District Judge James Boasberg blocking further deportations under the act, further thrusts the Supreme Court into Trump's whirlwind. Perhaps most significant matter now pending on the court docket, dealing with his second term, and it sits at the center of an explosive confrontation between the White House and the judiciary. And if you remember, Justice Roberts came out basically on behalf of Boasberg. Justice Roberts placed Boasberg at the head of the FISA court. I don't know. This will be a very interesting one to watch play out. I don't know details of when it's going to actually, when we're going to see it at the Supreme Court. Ash probably could answer that, but we'll definitely be covering it. This is the one I'm looking forward to the most, this case, because it has to do with wartime powers, the arguments. I'm hoping we see an argument on like from the perspective of Campbell versus Clinton. That's, if you've been watching me for a while, I've mentioned that case so many times. It's my favorite case, favorite precedent, allowing President Trump to basically respond to whatever he deems as an act of war and respond how he deems fit. So very curious to see how that plays out. The Panama Canal port sale has been put on hold by Chinese regulators. We haven't heard much about the Panama Canal in a few weeks, ever since that story broke where BlackRock was buying 2 ports. And now we have this. Chinese antitrust regulators are investigating a U.S. consortium deal for 2 ports in the Panama Canal zone, delaying the deal's closing that was originally set for next week. President Trump has incorrectly claimed China controls the canal. Panama controls it. Although China owns ports on both sides of the crucial maritime passage, Trump has threatened to have the United States once again take control of the canal between the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans. Yeah, I think it was 2 weeks ago, there was rumors that there was a memo circulating at the Department of Defense outlining different ways they could approach taking back the canal, and one of them was direct military invasion. I don't know if any of it's true. It's all according to sources familiar with the matter. But anyway, the deal right now with BlackRock, or led by BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager with an enormous pool of $11.6 trillion in assets, was announced earlier this month and was widely viewed as a way to ease tensions in the region. BlackRock agreed to lead a group that would buy Hong Kong firm C.K. Hutchinson's controlling interest in 43 other ports around the world, comprising 199 berths in 23 countries. And the stories that they were coming out with was the reason this deal was taking place was because of President Trump. And so now China's basically putting a halt on this. I wonder how this will affect the tariffs and the trade negotiations that are starting next week, Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever, the 2nd. This is an interesting chess move here. We'll see how Trump responds. I'm expecting a scathing Truth Social post raising tariffs at some point. There was an article I was going to go through. I think I'm going to skip it, but it might be worth you guys to read. If you're looking for something to do this afternoon and you're not watching Badlands, I would go to Politico and look at this article. If we don't get our stuff together, then we are going to be in a permanent minority. Talking about the Democrats. It's some weird propaganda. Very weird propaganda, especially after they're winning all these special elections. We haven't fixed our election system yet. I think, when's the Wisconsin vote? Ash, do you know? I know you're in the chat. Do you know when the Wisconsin election is that Scott Pressler's currently freaking out about? I got a freaking text from Scott Pressler. Not actually him, but it was one of those spam ones. I don't know if you guys can see that. Scott Pressler, I need help. I'm too busy chasing ballots. Ridiculous. But yeah, Ash, let me know. April 1st? Okay. Stefanik's withdrawal suggests Republicans are sweating their thin margins. We've been saying it. Trump keeps pulling House members into his cabinet. It only lessens the margins, and it's going to make the first couple months to a year even of of congressional bills and whatnot going through. It's going to make it interesting. And I still want to know why Matt Gaetz never went back to Congress. He could have, after he dropped out as being AG. I hope someday I can get him as a guest because I would love to ask him that question. He should have gone back. But anyway, President Trump's decision to keep Stefanik in Congress is the clearest sign yet that the political environment has become so challenging for Republicans that they don't want to risk a special election, even in safe red seats. And this is why I wanted to read this article, is because the way they frame some of this, it's when you approach these stories with a mindset, or at least an understanding that our election system is completely fraudulent and they can get whatever result they want pretty much at any time, it just changes how they're framing it. It changes your understanding of what they're trying to do here. And so let me read this. Oh yeah, I'll just read from here. The decision to pull Stefanik's nomination came as Republicans grew increasingly anxious about the race to fill the seat of National Security Advisor Mike Waltz on April 1st. Polling in the district, which Trump carried by 30 points, had tightened, and the president himself is hosting a teletown hall there to try and bail out Republican Randy Fine. Some Republican strategists said it's not worth taking the risk of losing Stefanik's sprawling northern New York seat, which Trump won by 20 points. I mean, isn't it kind of crazy that we are worried about losing seats where we have a 30 and 20 point margin? And the only way I can understand that happening is with election fraud. There's no other possible explanation. None. So we just fix our elections and it shouldn't matter. Anyway, if we're far underperforming in seats Trump won by 30, then there's obvious concern about having to chance special elections in seats Trump won by a lot less. Anyway, it's just an interesting narrative they're trying to spin here. I want to show it. And this, I thought this guy had retired, but I guess I forgot he was finishing out his term. McConnell slams Trump administration's peace talks with Russia. This guy can politely suck it. Senator Mitch McConnell warned Thursday that advisors to President Donald Trump are pursuing an illusory peace with Russia that shreds America's credibility, leaves Ukraine under threat, weakens our alliances, and emboldens our enemies. I don't understand how people can have this thought process. I just don't, or believe it to be true. When American officials court the favor of an adversary at the expense of allies, when they mock our friends to impress an enemy, they reveal their embarrassing naivety, McConnell said, according to prepared remarks shared with Politico ahead of a U.S.-Ukraine Foundation event Thursday, where he was honored. Imagine that. Unless we change course, the outcome we're headed for today is the one we can least afford, a headline that reads, Russia wins, America loses. While some GOP lawmakers have warned the administration not to bend to Russia as it tries to hash out a peace deal between Moscow and Kyiv, many top congressional Republicans have signaled they are willing to give Trump space. Not McConnell, however, who vowed shortly after he announced last year that he'd step down. He said that he would use his final years in the chamber to advocate for a muscular foreign policy. As Senate GOP leader, he helped shepherd additional Ukraine aid through Congress. We thank him for that, don't we? Even as he faced fierce pushback from MAGA-oriented Republicans in the House, as well as some of his own members. That was part of the reason McConnell was honored Thursday with the Star of Ukraine Award. That is insane. An American congressman, Senate Majority Leader, was just given the Star of Ukraine Award. How's that for? What a good guy, what a good stand-up guy. Speaking of tariffs, too, the European Union is going to make trade concessions to avoid Trump's reciprocal tariffs. It's so funny how this works every single time. So far, the pattern is almost fully developed. Trump threatens a tariff. Country says they're going to react poorly. Mainstream media freaks out, saying it's going to completely damage the economy. Trump has no idea what he's doing. People don't understand tariffs, all these things. But then every single time, they bend the knee, and nothing the mainstream media was gaslighting us about comes true. Mexico's done it. Colombia did it. Canada kind of did it. I don't even know where they're at. But speaking of that, Trump had a call with Canada Prime Minister today. But anyway, it's happening with the European Union. And here's that call. True Social Post, I just finished speaking with Prime Minister Mark Carney of Canada. It was an extremely productive call. We agree on many things, and we'll be meeting immediately after Canada's upcoming election to work on elements of politics, business, and all other factors that will end up being great for both the United States of America and Canada. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Are any of you guys looking at Trump's True Social Post differently? I started doing this a while ago, but after what happened with Lindsey Graham yesterday, I should have said this yesterday. But I I don't take anything he says on True Social to heart. Like, I don't think he's friends with Mark Carney now. I don't think he's actually going to, do anything that's going to benefit Canada. He's America first, but he puts a post out like this, and it's almost like a nothing burger to me. He's telling us he had the call. He's playing politics and being nice and friendly now, but a week from now, we're going to see a post from him probably that's Mark Carney's the worst. What are we doing? He's terrible for your country. Next governor, whatever. Canada should be part of the United States. All these things. He uses True Social as like both his diplomatic channel. Like, he's speaking to the diplomats. I think somebody said that in the chat. Yeah, he's being diplomatic. Chollins or C. Hollins. He uses it for diplomatic reasons. Then he also uses it to like feed his base when he feels him getting antsy. Yeah, you're right, Bravis. He's steering the ship, the narrative ship, and the actual ship. He's steering all the ships. Oh, did you guys see this? Tim Walz, take a listen.
We see one of the first things they do is try and restrict the vote. This is one of the things, though, that this is going to take power to the streets. And I don't know what the answer is on this, but I've been saying this. I think we need a shadow government, so when all these things come up every single day, we've got an alternate press conference telling the truth about what things are happening, telling what's going out.
That's a shadow government. That sounds like treason. He's advocating for treason. And I don't know what the punishment for that is, but I've heard it's not good. So maybe we should look into that. That guy's such a clown. Did you see him walk? He walked back some of his statements too the other day. I don't remember which ones. Maybe they're on here. Oh no, I'm not scrolling that far back. Never mind. Ignore me. A couple more stories here, and then we'll start wrapping up. And I think we'll do a couple of the liberal meltdowns of the week. So I got to get my segment thing up. Liberal meltdown of the week. It was hard to choose from. There's a few like crazy things that happened this week. First, we got this. The person caught keying their car goes to prison. I can't believe by now we're still seeing people keying Teslas, because every time somebody does it, there's a camera that's monitoring them. Are these people that stupid? Did they not have social media? Because if I was a leftist, a liberal, and I see everybody continually getting caught damaging these Teslas, I would figure something else out. I wouldn't go up to the next Tesla I see and key it, knowing I'm on camera doing it. They're so stupid. Scooter 2650, did a North Dakota deputy AG become dead too? Yeah, there was some story. Some former, I remember seeing. I don't remember the details, even though it's North Dakota. I don't pay as close attention to North Dakota politics as I should. I do my best, and advocate for stuff when and where I can, but I mostly focus on the national stuff. But yeah, there was a North Dakota politician who got in trouble for sex trafficking or something crazy. If anybody has the link, you want to send me that. We have a, this is a good one. Take a listen to this.
Oh, hi. I didn't see you there.
Sarah McBride, by the way, this is the dude that's pretending to be a woman in Congress.
You're probably wondering why you're in my Washington, D.C. office refrigerator. Well, let me tell you. The absurdity never ends in a Republican-controlled House of Representatives.
She's calling the Republicans in the House absurd. When she's a dude, he's a dude dressing like a woman. Like, this is a dude wearing a dress right now, calling House Republicans absurd. So I just wanted to point that out. We got this.
Destruction of property is a perfectly viable source of protest. No harming humans, obviously. Yeah. Human life is sacred no matter whose it is. But property these are just things. These are just cars. Destruction.
Saying it's okay to damage property. It's an interesting thing for a liberal to say. I wonder how she would feel if a bunch of people went and damaged her property. I'm not advocating for that, but people are just so stupid. But this is by far, I would say, my favorite from this week. I don't know if you guys saw this, but Nashville State Rep Justin Pearson lunged at another congressman over a debate here.
The noes prevail. House Bill 1392 fails. No, sir. 5-minute recess.
I'm surprised this guy's still in government. Wasn't he? He did something like 2-3 years ago. I'm trying to remember what it was. Was it he invited a bunch of people into the house, or he did some speech or something? Like that guy got famous for some reason. I don't remember why. And yeah, there's no sound in that video. That was not on my end. That was from the video itself. But I'm trying to remember what he did. Does anybody remember? I'm trying to find it right now, so I'm looking. So bear with me. Because he got kicked out of the legislature, and then they reinstated him. Yeah, I'll look that up. Maybe figure that out next week. But I'm going to be in Nashville next week. Maybe I'll run into him, say hi. All right. Now, quick recap from the week. The biggest stories from the week, I would say, and I won't like go into too much detail because we're getting a little short on time. But sorry, I'm just reading the chat here. He acted white and then acted black, right? No, I don't think that was him. He got ousted for some reason. I'm trying to remember why. I don't remember it. Clearly not that important. But anyway, biggest stories this week. Number one is the election integrity EO from Trump. I'm more so curious. It's what we've been waiting for. It's a first step. Dr. Swain was absolutely right, though. It's up to the legislator, and even more local than that. I think it's up to the local states to handle this stuff. I don't know if we're going to get Congress. And the part she called me kind of a doomer about, which is, you can call me a doomer. That's fine. It's fair. I feel like I'm more of a realist. It's really hard to imagine a scenario where the people who benefit from fraudulent elections fix those fraudulent elections and therefore no longer benefit from them, right? How are we going to find a way to get those people motivated to make that change? I don't know. That's the part where I don't know. I don't have a solution for it. I'm just very skeptical that they're going to be the one. It's got to be something else. This executive order, it's a good start, but I don't think it's going to go far enough. I'm just very curious to see how it unfolds and what comes of it. And the other thing I'm looking for with it, in conjunction with it, is the disclosure of what happened in 2020 and maybe even further back in 2016 with the Crossfire Hurricane stuff and all these things. If there's more disclosure about their direct interference in the election, that could help. That could help move things along and motivate some people to make some reforms. So those two things could go hand in hand. And that's kind of the second story that I think is one of the bigger ones from this week is we are allegedly going to get the declassification of the Crossfire Hurricane documents. The potential for what information is in there, it's juicy. It's juicy to think about. I don't know if it'll be a JFK type, just here's all these documents, dig through it yourself, or if there's some sort of executive summary. Because remember, Trump wanted to get this stuff out before he left office the first time. Mark Meadows supposedly had it. He brought it back to the DOJ for some further redactions. And on the 20th, it went missing. Nobody knows where it went. So it's a very interesting story. I'm curious if they're going to come out and say, we don't have it. Remember that missing binder? We can't find the documents. Or if they're just going to put it all out. I'm very much looking forward to it. That was my second favorite story this week. The Signal chat story, for multiple reasons. The fact it happened, the fallout from it. It's a key attack vector for the left. And seeing all the conservatives and right-wing influencers basically cover for the Trump administration over something that is objectively a bad thing. Yes, it's not as bad as other things, but it's still an objectively bad thing. And if we're going to be advocating for America First principles, you do it based on each situation separately, not comparing the situations to each other. As I said earlier this week, we need to have some accountability and justice, but we need to set that standard. And you can set that standard for the influencers you follow too. It goes for myself as well. If I'm doing something you don't like or see myself being a hypocrite or not advocating for America First principles, I would hope you would call me out. But we should be doing that to everybody. You can only see the change if you demand it. If you don't say a word, you're never going to see it. So that's number 3. And then, I think that might be that. And maybe today's the story of Trump asking the Supreme Court to step in with the Boasberg and the Alien Enemy Act situation, because that Supreme Court case, I think, is going to come with a lot of really interesting information and potential confirmations of stuff that we've been talking about for a while. And we need something at some point to outline the constitutional limits of the 3 separate branches. This could be one of those cases. Maybe. Might not be. I don't know. But here you go, John. See you in Nashville. Yeah, so the event is happening in Nashville. I'll have an announcement on this probably tomorrow on the Power Hour about that as well. Some might be a slight change, but I'll let you guys know, and we'll email everybody. But thank you, Jester. Pull this up. What to know about the Tennessee? Oops. What to know about the Tennessee? Why is this in the way? There we go. What about the Tennessee 3? Why were 2 of the Democrat lawmakers expelled, and what happens now? Huh. I'll read that later. I'm not gonna do it now because we're almost out of time. So I'm gonna play the outro video, and I'll come right back to read the rants. You guys have a great rest of your week. Hit that thumbs up. Make sure you guys tune into the Liberty Den tonight. It's kind of slowly becoming my favorite show to do. It's just a lot of fun. I love all the shows, but just fun hanging out and kind of talking about whatever with your buddies. So it's good vibes. I'd encourage you to tune into that tonight, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Other than that, you guys have a great weekend, and I'll be right back.
Let's get started. That's what she said.
Oh, that's real good.
Why they stopping me?
All right. A couple rants here. Eleanor 2000, thank you for weaving in these guests. Dr. Swain is such a beautiful, brilliant person who was a rare voice for truth in Vanderbilt. Wish she was part of the Trump's admin. Understandable being nervous. I don't even know why. I mean, I've heard of her before, but if I'm being totally honest, I didn't really know who she was until the producer booked her last week. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm aware of her. And then as it got closer, I was like, man, I don't know why I'm so nervous for this. But anyway, maybe she'll find herself back on the 1776 commission or something. Badlands Mini fan, great interview. You are entering the big leagues now. Your work is great because you're genuine and not a super polished or fake journalist. Are you saying I'm not polished? What are you saying there, man? I don't know if I should be thankful for that or offended. No, just kidding. Thanks, man. 12 Any Boy says, favorite daily moment is when Dr. Swain called you negative and you rant about it after she left. I hope that gets clipped out. Yeah, thank you, Ty. Looking forward to seeing you next week, by the way. This is something I was thinking about too, as we're getting these guests on, like more normie. And I don't want to call her a normie, but people who aren't. I mean, she clearly has a different perspective on our elections, for instance. That's a great example. And my realistic approach and thought process about our elections is going to differ from people like her. And like next week when I have, in the coming weeks when I have people who are actual Congress members on, and I raise these points, they're obviously going to disagree to a certain degree, extent, and potentially call me negative for having that approach, not knowing how I operate and approach information. And so how am I going to handle that? And I've been thinking about it, but it hasn't happened yet until today, and I don't think I was fully prepared to counter. So I'm gonna rewatch it and definitely think of how I want to respond when those criticisms or whatever come up, because I don't consider myself to be negative. I'm very neutral. I don't get too high or too low with any of this stuff, at least with how I approach information. And I don't think I'm wrong about our elections. Some people don't take it as far as we do. But anyway, thanks for the rant, man. Ashley D. Not only did we become a mentally ill country, we catered and coddled them. It needs to end, full stop. I would agree with that. Absolutely. And then Jester3334, here you go, John. See you in Nashville. Thanks, man. I will read that story, and if I feel the need to, I will comment on it next week. But that's everything. See you tonight on Liberty Den. You guys have a great rest of your Friday. Tune into Ghost Show at 3 p.m. Why We Vote at 6 or 7 p.m. Ash, correct me if I'm wrong. Let me check the calendar. Why We Vote is at 7:30 p.m. Okay. Catch you guys later.